Welcome to the Tech Quarterback Show. I'm your host, Brent Chapman, the show that gives you a front row seat inside the huddle with the people driving innovation, building teams, and keeping your business moving forward. As I would say, your company's technology quarterback or senior technology executive. Today, we're joined by a proven technology leader who has built and led high-performing teams across multiple industries, from retail and consulting to hospitality and large-scale events. She's helped organizations modernize, transform, and grow. Joining me to discuss that and more, from Associa, Divisional Chief Information Officer, Michelle Johnson.
I love it. I love it.
There you go. Welcome to the show, Michelle. Now,
Thank
you
you.
did play basketball, so you've probably had a intro like that before, but is that the first one in a really long time?
Oh, you're saying really, really long time? Maybe just a long time.
Long time.
Really? No, how about really, really long time? Yeah, that was great. Brought it all back to me.
Well, a previous guest said the last time he had that was sixth grade. So
Oh, okay. A little.
That's why I said really long time.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's great.
Well, thank you for, it's a sports show, so we have to have sports introductions, right? So, Michelle, thanks again for joining the show. Tell us a little bit first. Let's just get into that. Tell us a little bit about Associa and your role as Divisional Chief Information Officer.
Yes. So at Associa, they are largest property management and home association services company in the country, and have global presence. So I run the I'd say traditional but enterprise services for Associa, and I report up into the president of the digital services and tech services division, Andrew Brock. Some of us in the audience know Andrew. And it is a unique, awesome business model, high growth, great family-led culture, family-owned, private, based here in Dallas. So it's been awesome to just get up to speed and start the learning curve with them.
So it sounds like that's a great environment to be in. And you mentioned Andrew Brock, a great CIO himself that has had a great career. And I'm sure we'll talk about him a little bit more as we get through just talking about kind of networking and some of that stuff. But Michelle, before we get into all the technology stuff,
yes,
you played collegiate basketball at Northern Michigan and St. Ambrose. Those are two different schools?
Yep. One D2 and one NAIA.
NAIA and Division what?
2.
Division. So Northern Michigan is Division 2.
NCAA.
Yep. I went to high school in Detroit. So
yeah.
Northern Michigan is up. Where is that?
Marquette.
Marquette. Oh yeah, that's way. I don't hear any Youper. See, Texas, where we are now, they don't understand that UP.
Beautiful up there.
It's kind of like how West Texas has their own thing, right? UP has their own.
I would agree.
Their own way of talking. It's very unique if you've ever heard it. Yep. Tell us a little bit about that experience playing college basketball, and then what did that teach you that you still use and apply in your career today?
Well, the experience was awesome. Never, expected to have an opportunity to play on scholarship, at those kind of levels. And, both schools that I played for, made it to tournaments postseason. Awesome. Just great players, great teammates, great coaches, and just that experience, just continues to teach.
What position did you play, Michelle?
At the larger school in Michigan, I played a shooting guard, and the wing 3-player, swing player, and then sometimes, depending, could go down into a power forward. I'm like 5'10", a little over 5'10". Yeah. So then when I went to a smaller school, played kind of about everywhere except point guard. It just kind of depended on what we needed, and
they weren't putting your your the ball in your hands to bring it up the court.
No, that was pretty painful in my little zigzag,
It
arm
is
guard.
definitely a unique skill that you have to have.
Mhm.
It's not for everybody to be able
Right.
to bring
Different
the
kind of
ball
coordination, I'm telling you.
up.
Uh, but
Well, being a shooting guard in shooting, though, is also a very unique skill that is not for everybody, too. There's a lot of players that don't actually shoot incredibly well.
it's true. That's true. It takes, well, and I think that probably goes to the answer to your next question is, I think what I found out for myself, again, this is me, but focus, focus and consistency gave me confidence. And I think it's that kind of non-sexy term of just putting in the work.
Yep.
I think as we face challenges in our career, or we're trying something new, or we get, promoted and you have the nervousness, um, being in a big game, being on the line with the big shot. If you put in the work, not to say you just don't, you don't have nerves or you don't make mistakes, but having focus and consistency, to me, for me, is what gives me confidence, but definitely no shortcuts.
It's very interesting that you say that because I think that hard work and repetition,
Yeah,
discipline and consistency breed confidence. So when that moment happens, it's not the first time or the second time you're doing it, it's the 1000th time.
exactly. And I think free throws are the best example of that, right?
This is very true. And that is
Mhm.
why it is mind boggling me why I go watch prep games and they can't make free throws because that's the one thing you can go do
Anywhere.
outside in your driveway with
The hoop,
nobody
the
there.
distance, the height, they haven't moved the free throw line
Yeah,
like they
the
moved the 3-point
ball's the
line.
same
Yeah, right.
size.
Well, and to that point, I made, a commitment to free throws probably a little later in my career, but you get to a point where we started practicing like the last 30 of 100 with our eyes closed, right? Because it's muscle
Done.
memory. It should just become muscle, like you say, the ball, the distance, the height, the environment at
Is
every
muscle memory.
every
Interesting.
court, every facility, every place is the same. And that is what kind of
I
taught me how to
will
be
say,
confident.
and obviously, I spent a lot of time in football, but
Yep.
it's very similar in football with receivers and catching the ball as it is with free throws because it's something that takes a lot of repetition to be good at, but it's not really something you do much in practice. A receiver might get
That is true.
10 balls a game, or you might shoot 10 free throws in practice or 10 balls in practice, but the ability to get better at catching your free throws is really on your own time.
Hmm. Yep.
You've
And
got to, you've got, you've
away
got
from
to
everything.
outside
Yeah.
of what the team's doing, you've got to put the work in, which goes back to your point of that consistency and that dedication. You've got to, it's not sexy, but you got to put the work in if you want to be successful at anything.
Yep.
So, Michelle, your path is fascinating. You started in retail and consulting and then worked across companies like Deloitte and FedEx and JC Penney before moving into some more technology CIO leadership. How did you make that transition into technology leadership and what sparked your passion for IT? How'd you get from school and basketball into some of this retail and stuff? And just kind of walk us through how you got into technology.
Sure. And I think, it's important to call out when you mentioned retail, it was the operational side of retail. It wasn't retail technology, it was being in the stores and in the field doing operations for J.C. Penney. But I think the pivot point, I know the pivot point for me, again, maybe not a real fascinating story, but I went back and got my MBA full time at the University of Kansas. And it was at the point of kind of the dot-com bubble at the end of almost at 2000, and so I did a lot of extra work, extra classes in information technology and information management. So that was the pivot point for me. But then I think I blame the rest on Deloitte Consulting. Just had a fascinating 5 years just immersed in working with super smart people at some amazing companies and clients doing this thing called transformation. I don't even know how much that word was used,
No, probably
back,
wasn't.
in 2000, 2005. I know ERPs were a big thing. I got involved in enterprise, architecture, enterprise integration tools were coming out then, looking at things holistically like ERPs, but I didn't join an ERP practice. And that's really where I think, you kind of get that itch and that bug of how these things can really impact how a business performs in the long term.
It's very interesting because I had a similar experience, right?
Hmm.
In the late 2000s, I went to work for Pro Systems in a similar role, right? In that sort of technology around a lot of smart people and being able to do different things, transformation projects, data center migrations, right? Building out all this stuff
The variety.
and it was I mean, I was leading you name a discipline and I led it, which
Yeah.
is which is which is your background as well. And so people listening understand it's like part of being a CIO isn't being necessarily really great at one discipline. It's about really understanding all the disciplines. And
And
when
how to
you
learn
all
as
those
all of them
disciplines,
evolve and change and yeah, are needed.
yeah. So I mean, I was in the data center cabling, so I understand how a data center works. Right. I was doing stuff on the information security side and the data side and the storage, right? Like you learn all these different and then ran an app dev team. So you learn all these different things. First of all, the more you learn, the more interesting I think technology becomes.
Hmm.
Like
Absolutely.
for
And how
me,
it
and it sounds like
ties,
for you, it sparked that interest.
absolutely. And the impact, the business impact always was kind of the bottom line for me.
The downstream effect of,
Mhm.
hey, I worked really hard on this thing and now I see how that helps the business. I got you.
Absolutely.
So then you spent over a decade so you became a CIO, and
Hmm.
then you spent over a decade at Freeman, which is one of the largest events companies in the country. And, you worked there and then eventually served as CIO. What initially drew you into that space, into events? And then, what were some of the unique challenges with events that might be different from, say, financial services or even what you're doing at Associa today?
Sure. Well, I mean, no, I hadn't really heard of an events company, so it's not like I knew the events industry. It's
It's
like I felt
pretty
like
niche.
either people knew, especially Freeman in their brand, either people knew Freeman or had never even heard of what that whole business was about. So I really was the former CIO of FedEx, Kinko's office, had moved to Freeman, and I was actually just calling him for some advice, and ended up working for him over at Freeman. And part of that was at the time FedEx office, was merging and being
That
uh,
was the Kinko's FedEx
Yeah,
merger.
FedEx had purchased them probably about 5 years ago. So a lot of things started moving to Memphis and being part of FedEx services. And so I wasn't, sure if I wanted, what I was going to do there. And so again, calling for some advice and ended up, going over to Freeman to see what that was all about. And, you can say the rest is history for the time I spent there. But what was interesting is, and again, I'll go back to the time that I joined, the company was going, again, through some really fast growth for the size it already was. But in the events industry, so much was decentralized. I mean, you're basically fundamentally, and it's still this way, this model is still the same today, where you go into an empty slab and pillar convention center, and you basically set
Yeah.
up a small to large city
Yeah.
2 weeks for a 4 day event, and then you tear it down and and another show moves in. And you're doing that 2, 3,000 plus times a year.
That's incredible.
And it's just
Well, because
fascinating.
think about that. I even just when you walk in those big convention centers and you see that conference set up and you go, holy moly.
Everything you could possibly need, want, and experience is
And you're
built
saying
on a
they do that in
temporary
two
basis.
weeks.
Yeah, on a temporary, it's all there temporary, right? The Consumer Electronics Show doesn't stay there year round, but every event has its own uniqueness, whether it's in the convention building itself, the city, the type of event it is. I could go on and on. It's unique business models being stood up and torn down, every 1 to 2 weeks in a convention center.
This is fascinating, Michelle. What's fascinating is just not just how unique events is, but how you've been in all these different real estate and events and all these different sort of
Unique business models for sure.
industries with different business models, which kind of leads us into the main topic of the conversation today. Which is I really want to talk to you about the evolution of a CIO. Like how does one really become a CIO, and then just kind of what that life cycle is a good way to put it, I think, is like. So, the role itself has changed dramatically over the past decade. What used to be focused on keeping the lights on, and I used to call it the email janitor, right? That's how I viewed myself as what used to be that is now much more focused on strategy, innovation, driving business outcomes. And that makes a lot of sense because all companies today are essentially technology companies. It's kind of hard not to be a technology company today. You have to use it to make your business successful. So how have you seen the CIO role evolve over your career? And what do you think defines a great technology leader today?
So I think the CIO role, how I've seen it evolve, and you kind of touched on it, but it used to be a pretty traditional role. Like it was the same stuff at the same place.
Make sure my email works.
And like
Make
pretty
sure the
standard.
printer works.
Pretty standard. Yeah. Help me with, you have somebody, a help desk, email, network, data, data set, whatever, right? I call it pretty standard, right? Just to be very generic and broad to like you said, to the last, decade or, maybe just a little more. I think that is still obviously part of the job, but it's become a smaller percentage of all other responsibilities and those and all other duties as assigned, if you will. But those also come with a lot more variety in a role from role to company to business to business. We can think about a lot of our colleagues. Sometimes when you're catching up with somebody or you haven't seen anybody in a bit and they're a CIO at a different place, I find myself saying, "Oh, what does that entail? What does that mean at this company? How does it compare to what you were doing here? Or what, oh, you call that digital, or you call this innovation, chief digital officer, chief data officer, chief innovation, like, oh, that's part of that now. Oh, you have somebody else that does this, and that's your peer." I think the role can mean so many: chief technology officer, digital, information. That's what I've seen, is
And
it
it means
because of the
different things to different
strategy,
companies.
and the leadership and the transformation. What else comes with keeping email up, which I say, nobody calls just to thank me for email being up all day. It's everything else that may or may not be a part of the job, maybe any given year, right? Even as you are a CIO, that role can change over time. So that's what I've seen. And then with that, to be a good technology leader is being able to move with that, have a learning, I guess, what's the learning mindset, focus, consistency, gain confidence that you can go with the change, that you can learn what needs to be done next, and be somewhat, maybe entrepreneurial is a strong word, but in your ideas and in how you approach the problems, because change, change is inevitable. That's just
exactly. And I think you bring up a good point, is as you're going through As through the life cycle of a CIO, you get your first gig, you start, you're not, and I think this is important for people listening to understand. CIOs are not 20, 30-year jobs. They're not. We would love for them to be. That would be fantastic. They're
Mm,
not. They're 24, 36, maybe 48 months. Like, there, you come in, you do the thing the last guy couldn't do, and then you're the guy that can't do anything, and then the next guy comes in and does the thing that you couldn't do, and then he's the guy that just is like this, like, 3-year cycle. And so I think that it's important. What you're saying is, you as a CIO have to know what you want, because you have to, when you're talking to companies as you're looking for another job, is you have to be able to understand how it works at their company,
mhm.
because
What's the priority?
CIO does not mean CIO.
Hmm.
It doesn't.
That's
I
absolutely.
I
You can
was
even
talking to a
read
friend
a
the other
job
day that said,
description.
I was talking to a
Yes.
friend the other day that says, I'm the CTO at this company. Oh, so you deal with like product facing technology? Oh, no, I manage the servers and the infrastructure and the network. The CIO does that stuff. Like, I mean, that's literally flipped.
That
So,
is tradition. Yep.
and then you'll hear like, and then I'll be like, oh, who do you report to? I report to the transformation officer, or the chief digital. I'm like, what? Like, it's just,
What does that
you
mean?
have to have a good understanding of what you want to do. Would you agree with that, Michelle? And then be able to understand how they do things there, and
Mhm.
be real
And if it
clear
fits.
about it,
Yeah. And if it fits, right?
and if it fits.
Because I think to your point, you can read any CIO job description and have a lot of questions if
Yeah.
you've been in, things that are on the job description. Well, what does that mean? What does that really entail? Where is that in the strategy? I think you're spot on.
So, as I was saying, the lifespan is not long, and it's common for CIOs to take a break,
Hmm.
move into fractional work, or explore advisory roles between. See, obviously we would love to be like, oh, it's coming to an end, let me go find the next thing. And I'll be honest, I've been blessed. Like, my first job, I went right into my second job, and then I went right into my third job after we sold, and then I went right into running a fintech company. So it's like, then I took a break. But like, you these things are going to happen because you're not going to time it perfectly. And what have you learned about just managing the life cycle of a CIO career, from long-term corporate roles to consulting and fractional leadership?
Mm. Um, I, man, it is so easy to say this, and I haven't been perfect at it. But I think you have to take stock in where you are, what's in it for you, um, like you said, what you want out of it, what you're looking for. And that goes on an annual basis, even when you are with a company within that 36 to 48 year period or 48-month period. Because something may shift and put you there for 60 or another 12, right? Months, based on things changing. Um, but I think you have to take stock in where you are, what you want, where your personal life is, what's your short game, what's your long game. And I'm not one by any means that have said, well, by this year I want to do this, and then I'll just do that for a certain amount of time because then I'm going to go do this. I mean, I'm not that, because you have
You're
to
not
also,
that play. You're not
I'm not
that.
that, because to your point, you also have to kind of just navigate the flow. And I think it's trying to, you know, be conscious of where you're at and what you're doing and where your health is. And I mean, just mental, physical, spiritual health, but then also, what floats your boat and what you're interested in. And if you're still as interested in, what it was and versus where you want to go.
What about burnout? It's a real thing, right?
It's real. I think, the CIO, maybe we can just, blanket tall executives. I don't want to exclude it just as CIOs, but we know this from, our circles that we run in. That whole concept of like boiling a frog, you kind of get
Yeah.
into the water and you're feeling good and it's nice and relaxing, and you got your title that you were looking, I don't know, I was never really a title, but oh, you're feeling all
Yeah,
right.
it's
I
all
got some
good. You're having
stuff going
fun. You're making
on.
changes.
This is, yeah, I'm making changes. This is great. Oh, and then the water's a little warmer. It's kind of relaxing, and I'm getting used to this. All of a sudden, you turn around and it is boiling, and you
Yeah,
have got to get out, right?
yeah.
To me, that's the best way to, I think, describe burnout is sometimes it can just sneak up on you.
And I'm gonna and you and I have talked about this in the past, but I think that it really, really, really hit hard after COVID.
Yes, for a lot
Our
of us,
peer group,
our peer group. Yep.
our peer group that were CIOs during that period, I think that after that period, companies and back to your point, it's not just CIOs, it was
Mhm.
all corporate executives. Companies put so much pressure on executives and employees during that period that I think a lot of people were like, I'm
Mhm.
done.
Whether your company was, ended up soaring for a bit and trying to ride a
Yeah.
wave
Or
that,
was
that
crashing.
environment, yeah,
Yeah.
or the COVID took you down and you're trying to come back up in your industry, company, whatever the impact was. And besides all the family dynamics going on for everybody too, right? It
Well,
was,
that's part of it, right?
yeah,
Is because
yeah,
you have the job dynamics and then you have the real Brent and Michelle dynamics, right?
yeah.
And you're
And
trying to
usually
deal
you're
with
trying to keep the calm space to deal with the dynamics that are always going to be there with your career.
all I know is I did not have this belly that they can't see on this tape before COVID, and I had it after
After
COVID. so so I blame COVID.
COVID.
Do you think stepping out of the seat, before we go to the next question, do you think stepping out of the seat for a short period of time and doing something else can help provide perspective and actually make you better going back in?
Yes. And I think that's true. I think of anything you've done for a long time at a high, I don't say a high level, but like at a high engagement, at a high, intensity.
Yeah.
You take a high intense work, they say you should do interval workouts, right? I mean, even
Yes.
at a simple 30-minute interval workout, I think proves that point of, um, taking a break. But here we're talking, hey, let's take as, could be a month or two, could be longer, could be finding a different career coming back. Yeah, I think all of that is perspective. Talk about taking a vacation, taking, time out of the country. I don't know, right? Changing it up, whatever it is, however, dramatic or long or short it should be. I think all that is perspective.
I will say before moving on, though, Michelle, you and I have a problem that I think most people in that position have, which is it's kind of hard to turn it off.
Like I
uh,
said, I can say some of these
I
things, had
didn't.
to practice some of these
My
things,
wife would
but I
complain that
completely
I didn't
agree.
enjoy a vacation for 8 years. I couldn't. I couldn't. I couldn't turn it off.
On call.
I just couldn't. I couldn't stop and relax. I
Hmm.
just was thinking about it the whole time. And so it does help sometimes to step away for an extended period of time so that you can kind of recollect. If
Reset, yeah, reset boundaries,
Yeah, that's
reset
true.
thought
And every
patterns.
every new opportunity, like I was different after my first CIO gig about what I expected in my second, into my
Mm,
third. Then now that I've run a startup and I've had that experience, I think my expectations are different moving forward. Right. I think things grow, you
yeah,
mature, your life changes, you go through different stages of life. Right. I went from one young kids to kids in middle school and high school now. So
yeah.
your perspective changes. People go into empty nest situations, so and then your ability, so um you have to be, I think the key thing that you said is you have to be flexible. and you have to be able to gauge what you're looking for and make those changes throughout your career. And not look, if you want to go be CIO at some company for 30 years, this might not be the field for you. This is not how it works.
That's true.
It's not how it works. And if you're with a spouse that wants you to have a steady job your entire, this also probably isn't, because there's
That's
going to
true.
be ups and downs. There's going to be times where you're on a break
Hmm.
and it's not a voluntary break.
Yeah.
um, you've been part of several professional organizations. Like we actually met through Inspire CIO, among others.
Yep.
We're part of Private Directors Association together. There's a bunch of them that you
Tons of them.
SIM, and there's tons. And I'm sure there's some in the events industry and in the different industries that you've been in. There are for financial services. Um, how important have these communities been for you? And what advice would you give other aspiring technology leaders or CIOs about building a professional network and what that really means?
No. This is well, using sports analogies, this is a softball, man.
Oh,
Um,
it's a
this is a softball. Like these for me, again, speaking from the 10, 12 years of like they're priceless. I mean, look at us, right? And all those that were in the kind of what we call the original group through Dallas Inspire CIO. I mean, we're thinking of all the same names, and I have them all on my, could text any one of them right now and they'd respond.
Andrew Brock is a good
Andrew
example of one.
Brock,
You're working
who,
for Andrew.
yeah, he and I,
He
we were
was part of
all,
the group too. Yep.
yeah, some of the initial Inspire Dallas CIO members, and fast forward, and I have an opportunity to work with somebody that I greatly respect personally and professionally, and it all came from a place like a Dallas CIO network. I think so. So one, it's priceless, and with that, there are a lot. There's so many different groups between your industry groups, between tech groups, between tech leadership groups, and we'll talk about Private Directors Association too. But I think what's important is you find the ones that, the one, the two, maybe just the one that brings something to you, bring, the type of engagement, maybe the
Yep.
type of programs, the type of connections, the types of
The type
topics,
of people you want to meet, I
just the
think.
culture. Yeah,
Yeah.
the culture of
The
the
culture is important.
yeah, the culture of the group is super important, because you're going to spend time. You're not going to, go away for weeks with this, but like you're going to cut out some family time. You're going to dedicate, because you need to participate. That's probably the second thing. Pick a group that you fit the culture with, or it fits you and
And you need to
challenges you and
participate.
expands
And
your
I think
opinions.
Michelle, this is an important point to this, and you can elaborate on this comment that I'm about to make. But I'm thinking early in my career, people said you need a network, right? And I don't have a network. I'm a young guy in
Yeah.
my career, and I'm not a high executive. And so you start going to networking groups. And what I learned very quickly, and it kind of turned me off actually until I got into sort of some of the ones that we've been talking about, is they were very transactional in nature.
Oh. Mm.
People were at the networking group because they sold insurance, or they did something, or
Kind of
they're a
thing.
real estate agent, or you know now some of those YPO, is it YPO, is that the young, yeah, the young people
Yeah. Young
under
professional.
40 type, or under, well, for me it was
Yeah.
under 30 type stuff, right? The younger groups for like kids out of, those were seemingly okay because they weren't necessarily, those kids were just trying to meet people, but then you're meeting people that don't have networks also. So
Right. Well, and I think what comes, if I look back, and I think where you're maybe going to, if you stay consistent in your engagement. I'm not saying that you have to be the chair of every
yeah,
organization, every advisory
I
board,
think
or all that kind of
involvement's
stuff.
important.
But if you stay engaged, you start seeing the same people, you start remembering
Yep.
some stories, you start like all of it, like you start developing friendships as much as camaraderie
Yeah, that's
about
right.
the day job. And then you start catching up, you start asking for help. You start being happy for each other because you know the stories and
Yep.
you know the background and you know the life events and you know the changes and the decisions that all of us continue to make through those years. But it takes time putting in the work. But it becomes less transactional and it becomes more about, colleagues looking out for each other as, we continue to grow and
And
do
I think
different
that
things
like
in our life.
when you're in a industry group, right? Like Dallas CIO is like, it's not transit. We're not trying to sell each other things.
Right, no, right.
Right.
Yeah,
And so I think that that group was fantastic with the relationships we made.
it's awesome.
PDA is similar, right? It's not, I mean, you
Hmm.
got people from
And
different industries that have different interests, but they're not really trying, they're more senior level. They're not trying to sell each other
yeah, and
things,
just
right?
to give a note about the background of what Private Directors Association is, sometimes people don't always know, but it's a national association focused on the governance and board practices for private, any size, ESOP, founder-led, PE-backed private companies. And Brent, really, I would say we're involved in PDA the way we started at Dallas CIO. We walk
It's
into some of
funny.
these events and some of these people have known each other for decades,
It is true.
right? And we're, starting to meet people and starting to, lean in and participate. And I think it's for me, for us, I think, I'll speak for you a little bit, but it's a way to pull our network forward from the tech networks
That's
that
true.
we have in Dallas to a business network on board governance, which is, a place
Well, it's
that
a much
a lot of
broader
folks like
group
to
of
take
people. And
their,
I just
yeah,
like, and
yeah,
this would be my advice to people is don't be afraid to try different things. And here's the most
that too.
important thing: go and do just go and be consistent going and do what Michelle said, which is just meet people, talk
That's
to
it.
people, get involved, serve as a chair. Now, Michelle has done a much better job at this than I have. You're always involved. You were the chair of Dallas CIO, I think, or co-chair and
Yeah.
committee chair, and now you're the you. Well, I think I PDA, aren't you the greeter?
Oh, I played a little yeah, I've been an official greeter, but yeah,
it's
no, I've actually
it's
got,
not the official term. It's not Walmart greeter. It's
oh,
not
right,
that.
right. We don't wear vests, but
Yeah.
but I've leaned into helping Larry King with the programs, being on
Oh
a
yeah, yeah, that's right.
very small programs committee, which
Yeah,
again, just because I'm just kind of interested, right? I'm interested in that.
and PDA rolls right into the next question I was going to
Mhm.
ask,
Okay.
which is as technology becomes central to every business model, boards
Mhm.
increasingly want experienced technologists at the table. And
Yep.
we said that every company is a technology company. So don't you want a technologist on your board potentially to kind of be guiding that direction for you? So what value do you think that CIOs bring to boards, and how can technology leaders start preparing themselves for that kind of opportunity?
Mm. Wow. So yes, I think CIOs and technology executives bring a lot to board opportunities and to boards. I think one thing that I think is implied, but maybe I'll just say it, is especially for CIOs, or maybe depending whatever the title is, when we have such an exposure to all aspects of the business,
That is
whether
right.
it's from the marketing all the way down to the support, the business applications, the data, how everything connects, works, integrates, the risks between functions. Um, like, I think that in and of itself, being able to be on a board with that breadth of exposure to two business functions day in and day out maybe isn't always top of mind because, of course, cyber AI, the governance around data and all the things combined are definitely probably top of mind. But I think if you're a CIO that has that breadth of responsibility over time, you really become uh, uh, you've really been able to witness a lot across an organization, which I think is priceless at the board level. The other thing is, as you have different roles in executive leadership, a lot of times you do present to the board.
This is right.
I presented to the board at Freeman probably 10 to 12 times a year between the
Yeah.
audit committee, the risk committee, and then eventually on the management team sitting in board meetings, throughout. That is huge to understanding how to sit on the other side of the table. Um, and I think that's a huge kind of a feather in the cap to think about and to give yourself some credit as you have your own board experience in the roles that you're in. Um, I think you had a lot of questions in this one topic, but I hope well,
No, that's a great point is because as a CIO, you spend a lot of time with the board, right? Either
mhm,
presenting to the board. And so flipping that, you at least have the understanding of how it works. One thing I think that I'd like you to expand on, and I can add a little bit to it is how can I've been and heard some different things talked about this, been to some speakers that have talked about how do you go from a CIO to being on a board? And I think that the CIO role itself probably, although I think it's valuable enough to be on a board because you have that technology experience, the board of directors really look for more, right? They want
yeah.
people that have managed large P&Ls. They want people that have potentially ran a separate business unit, which some CIOs do at bigger companies, and they have some, especially like if you're running a profit center, like if you're selling products too, right? Um, so I would say like me having run a startup for a couple of years,
Yep.
that gave me experience in the CEO seat, managing a P&L, managing a complete business that's a little bit different than running a cost center. And I
Mhm.
think you have any thoughts on that? I think that's an important part that a CIO needs to either expand their roles to within their role, as they need to be able to have that P&L piece, I think. Would you agree with that?
Um, uh, it it definitely helps. Definitely helps. I think I've also seen where if you think of your board experience and exposure, transformation, which goes with risk, if you come from a highly regulated or
That's true.
compliant heavy industry, um, there's there's other things that if you really dissect and look, I think you and I have gone through some of the like kind of how to write a board resume,
Yeah.
and you kind of flip your traditional job resume and you start pulling out themes, management themes,
Yeah.
strategic themes, not the tactics of what you've done, but kind of think about what it took, what kind of skills it took
How'd you do
to
it? Yeah.
do those things. Um, that's how you have to start thinking about it. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a P&L. Um, because I think back to the variety of what a technology executive does for a company and what your journey is, um, you can pick through some of those specialties.
I think
And
it depends on
strategic
what the
thinking.
company's looking for, but let's be honest. Most board roles, they want people that grow the company.
Well,
This
and I was
is
going to say M&A is another part of
That's
that.
a big one. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think yeah, exactly. High growth, M&A is great, risk management,
You have to
transformation,
be able to show
tech.
as a CIO, like you're right, it doesn't have to be, but did you participate in M&A? Did you help grow your
And
company
how?
with the
Yeah.
use of technology?
Yep.
Right. I think that, did you help build products or did you support a line of business that grew, and do you
Hmm.
have that insight and experience?
Yep.
Um,
Exactly.
Wow, that was great, Michelle. Thank you so much for sharing that journey. One last fun question before we
Okay.
wrap up. Since the show is the Tech Quarterback Show, I ask every guest, it's very important. It can be past, it can be present, it can be pro, college, high school. But who is your favorite quarterback of all
Oh,
time? Ah, here
oh,
we go.
oh boy.
I
Oh,
love this question, by the way. I
mm.
got a Jackson Dart the other day.
I don't know if it's because it's so present.
Oh
I
no.
mean, I maybe have to go past and present, but um, So I got to go with two. I won't say like GOAT of all time, but who I enjoyed, what came to mind is Brett Favre.
Yes.
Some of his comebacks and the way he could drive the field were just
Incredible.
incredible. But I really enjoy, win, lose, or draw, I really enjoy watching Patrick Mahomes.
Okay. Well, well, that's true. That's a good one because he is very entertaining.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like the Brett Favre one because it talks about something that you were discussing earlier. And it's funny because I was literally talking with somebody a couple days ago about Brett Favre.
Okay.
And it's he wasn't necessarily the most athletic
Mhm.
or the best this, but he was a gamer.
Yes.
He worked hard, and when you needed the drive or you needed the touchdown, give him the ball and he was going to make it happen. And nothing was going to stop him.
It wasn't a matter of if, it was just watching how.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's so important, even just as a CIO. You talked about that earlier. It's about work ethic. It's about the want to, right? It isn't necessarily, are you the smartest or are you the best programmer? Do you know the best about most about network cables or
Right.
Azure? It's about how hard are you willing to work to learn it and put the effort in to be successful at it. And I think Brett Favre is a fantastic representation of that. Good choice,
Well,
Michelle.
I
I
love it.
like that.
Full circle. I love it. Thank you. Thanks for
Thank
having me.
you again for joining us today and sharing your journey from the basketball court to the boardroom and from leading large scale transformations to shaping the future of technology leadership. Your perspective on the evolving role of CIO mentorship and board service was awesome. And I'm sure our listeners will take a lot away from this conversation. And to our audience, thanks for tuning in and be sure to subscribe, share your feedback, and join us next time. Until then, I'm Brent Chapman, and this has been the Tech Quarterback Show. Peace.